Hey guys, so before every race I always give you a bike setup and a kit list, and so Inca Divide coming up next, 1800 kilometers at 27,000 meters elevation, so it's going to be a really tough race, and it's very rural, so there's a lot of times where you're going places where there's not really anywhere to get food or water or any hotels, so the distances between towns is huge, and same with the elevation, it just makes things a lot slower, so it's a really tough race. So I really needed a setup to match it. So this is my Linsky GR260. I've done a separate video on the setup of the bike. We're actually just talking about the kit on this video. So firstly I want to talk about what I'm going to be wearing. So I'm kind of a little bit undecided on what I'm going to wear right now, but I know the basic stuff. I'm definitely going to be using my Shimano S-Fire bib shorts. I absolutely love them, they're really good. And probably the S-Fire top as well. It is quite racy cut, but it just works for me. It's very comfortable and it just feels good, and you never get any irritation anywhere, so that's kind of the best thing. S-Fire socks as well, might as well get all the S-Fire kit, hey? Shimano neck warmer, and I've actually got a pair of gloves here, but this is just one single fingerless pair, so that's probably going to be gloves for the day. Keeping it all as blue as I can, the Shimano S-Fire shoes, so I'm going in pretty much full S-Fire Shimano kit. Although these are racing shoes, they're super comfortable and I absolutely adore them, so I definitely want to take them, especially where they look. They are so fancy. They go with like the chrome of the bike, which is really cool. And on top of that, obviously I'm going to go for the S-Fire sunglasses as well. Do you know what? I'm not really a big fan of sunglasses, but these are the only ones I can find which actually sit nicely on the nose, and they just work. So I'm, a really big fan of them. I'll definitely be taking them. So I've got all kind of like semi-blue kit, which is pretty cool, and a blue headband. Yep, headband. I always use this helmet because I really like it. It's cat-like. What I like about this compared to a lot of the others is it only weighs about 230 grams, so it's super light, it's really comfortable. Everyone's got like a funny shaped head, so this one just works for me, and I can really recommend it. I've had it a couple of years now, probably need to change in a year or two, because helmets do have a shelf life, guys, and that's something to remember, to always change your helmet every couple of years. So I want to split this video into three sections. I want to talk about the front of the bike here, so these two bags. I want to talk about the frame bag, and I want to talk about the rear. And I'm just going to run through what I keep in them and the way I kind of keep it all organised, because that's really important, especially in racing, to be organised so you're not, messing around looking for stuff. Okay. So let's start with the front roll bag. What I really like about this is how quick and easy it is to take on and off the actual bike. So it's just two little clips there. You can secure it a little bit better, which I probably will on the race, especially for the gravel sections, but for the minute it just works really nice. This came from Amazon. This was, I think, about £12, which is cheap and cheerful. It's not the best quality thing in the world, but it does the job and it looks pretty cool. What I love about it is it's got 4 sections. So you've got a big section in the centre there, section at the front, and 2 on the sides. So it really helps you stay organised, and I know I keep saying it, but staying organised on these races is such a big key, guys, especially in any kind of bike touring. You don't want to lose stuff or forget stuff, so being organised is so important. So in the front pouch, everything's very easily accessible anyway to get to, but the front pouch is easier. So what I do is I keep extra food in there and a few energy gels. These are for emergencies only. I really don't, on really big trips like the Inca, which is going to be probably over a week's riding for me, then realistically, they're just going to be for emergencies because they're not going to be readily accessible. And some electrolyte tablets. I do actually keep some extra ones in there, but I'll come back to that shortly. But here's where I keep a big stash of them. They'll probably last me the week. And then I also keep a lot of medical stuff in here. So paracetamol. I always end up going through a few paracetamol because you do end up really hurting eventually. Some ibuprofen. Supposedly it helps with kind of like swelling and stuff like that, but I've never really used it on a trip, but I always take it just in case you get injured or something like that. It's always going to help. Caffeine tablets. If it's late, you need to get somewhere and you just need that boost. It's always a good help. Plasters. You never know when you're going to need them for blisters and stuff like that, so I always carry some plasters. They weigh nothing. They do get in the way sometimes, but it doesn't really matter. And with the Andes and places like South America, some water cleansing tablets or water purification tablets. They're really good, but I've never ended up using any. But it's purely just in case you get really stuck. I hear it tastes quite awful when you actually do have them. And then in the centre here is probably, you know, an important section, a little bit harder to get to than the other ones, but that's why I kind of keep spares in there. So I keep this little kind of like dry bag in case it really does rain and I need to put my phone in it. But in the meantime, it keeps a GoPro battery. Yeah, can't even talk anymore. I don't know why, but I keep a seat clamp. I've always done that. I think I had a bad dream once that I needed a seat clamp because mine broke and I had to stand up for a while. So I always kind of take one. Don't even ask me why. It's a little bit weird, I know. And then a dropout. So, you know, with kind of like Halford's bikes and Carreras and stuff like that, the dropouts are a little bit weaker, so they do bend easily. And, you know, ones for like this bike are very strong, but I always take a spare because it's something that if you do bend, you are never, ever going to get another one in the middle of the Andes easily. So that could write off a whole race, you know, if you can break your dropout. So always take a spare of them. I know they're not cheap, but they're worth doing. I always keep one of the spoke keys for my wheels as well, just in case, because you never know when, you know, you're going to hit a bump just a little bit too hard or have an accident. So it's always worth keeping, you know, a little spoke key. And then last but not least, I also keep a patch kit and a gas canister adapter. I haven't got the gas because obviously I need to fly, so there's no point, you know, buying it now and then just getting it taken off me in the airport. So, and then on top of that, here's kind of like all the little bits and bobs for my electronics. So you got a wall charger there. I really like this one because it's got 4 USB ports, plug straight in. 2 of the ports are a little bit more powerful, so you can charge the bigger stuff a little bit quicker, and then you can also convert it to the UK. So that's good. That was, I think, about another Amazon buy. I should really kind of like put some links up for these. And then obviously you get all your standard kit in here as well. So I've got a pump, and I am running tubeless tyres, but I always carry 2 tubes in case, because you know it's going to be away a long time. It's going to be a lot of miles, a lot of riding. So a patch kit and 2 tubes should normally cover it, but I always go tubeless because I just think it's a fantastic way of, you know, riding, and it just saves you getting quite a lot of punch, especially when I'm going to be doing a lot of gravel as well. Probably the biggest multi-tool you'll find. I think this is a Toe Peak Alien. Just does everything, man. Absolutely everything. Pedals, it does your chain, it can ride your bike, it can do everything. So I really, really rate them. Really, really rate them. And then on top of that, I've got a few various cables there that just charge bits and bobs. And here, this is an old shampoo bottle, but it is actually filled with chain lube. So I always take some chain lube because you can go for miles without having any and it just destroys your chain within a matter of like half a day. So always carry some. Not the most ideal way of carrying it, but it does the job. And then on top of that, a spare gear cable and also some chain links, tie lever. I actually carry a spare phone, so this is just an old iPhone 4S, but it's just good for navigation in case you get stuck, so you can save your maps on there. If your Garmin goes, you can just use this. The battery life lasts a very long time, and it doesn't use much charge either when you're actually charging off power banks as well. And then I've got one power bank here. On top of that, in the next side column here is where I actually keep a few more of the electronics. I keep them in the side here because you can actually run the cables out straight to the top and charge everything kind of in the cockpit there. So I keep one power bank here, and then another one there, so that's 2 5,000 milliamp power banks, and then yet again a few more cables. And I want to talk really about my lighting. So as you can see, I'm using the Cat-Eye Volt 800, and that's a fantastic light. It's a really good front light. A lot of people use them, and honestly, if you're not going dyno, they are just the way forward. Why? Because you can actually use these cartridges to recharge. So as you can see here, I can charge up all my stuff like my phone, my GoPro, you know, my GPS, using the actual batteries for the light as well. This is an old Volt 800 I've got, so yet again I can actually use my power banks to charge my lights, and it's also nice to have a spare light there as well, just in case. I think the only time I've ever used a spare light is on a race once, where I actually found a guy sitting on the side of the road and his broke, and I, in the end, dropped mine on the floor and just let him kind of maybe use it just to get him to the finish, because it was dangerous, he was on a main road, so I kind of made sure that he was okay. So on top of that, I have, like I say here, my spare power banks, So these are 3,000 milliamps each, so I've got another 9,000 there. So that's going to last me more than enough to get in between hotels. It's probably a little bit overkill. There's probably a little bit too much weight there as well. And then on top of that, in this section here, I've got some bog roll because it's just important to carry that. And I've got a toothbrush, some toothpaste. Got to look after your hygiene. It's so important. Sudocrem. Sun lotion. So although in the mountains it is a little bit colder, the sun is killer there, so you have to be so careful. So I know it's like kids factor 50, but you just need it. You just need it. There's no yes or no about it. And then on the bike as well, I've got this little pouch here. This is kind of like the easy accessible. I normally keep a little bit of food in there, but in there I've actually got some hand gel to clear bacteria. And then going back to what I said about the electrolytes here, I actually keep a little cut down one here, and then I just keep a few in there. It means I can keep more food in the front, and then I've got a little space where I can just keep topping them up from the front of the bag eventually, and then throw this away when the time comes. So that's what I use for the front. That's all the easily accessible stuff. And now let's move on to the frame bag once I've packed this up. So now the centre frame bag, and I wanted this to be completely empty just for food and water. So I want to make sure I can carry enough water and enough food that if I am going through towns at night, then I've actually got space to keep a lot of food to keep me going all the way through the night and safely till I get to the next town, and making sure I've got enough food to get up these, giant climbs that I'm going to be facing. So what you can see here is I'm not actually carrying bottles in here. I've got one bottle there, that's what I'll use just kind of a backup and to mix my electrolytes in. But here I've actually got a 2 litre bladder. And it's got me a lot of space because it only comes up to about here, and the rest I can just fill with food around the actual bladder. The beauty of it is using the Blackburn bag. It's got an actual hole in here, so you can pull through and you can actually drink straight from the bag, which is really cool. This is also very good for hygienic reasons, and it's really easy to keep on top of using a bladder and keeping it clean. What's also really cool about this bag, and what I really like, is if you unzip this around this side, you can actually open it out to hold a lot more space as well. So there I can fit a hell of a lot of food into. And the bladder obviously gets a lot bigger when it gets full. It only takes up, a third of the bag as well. So I've got a really big open space in the centre there, and a capacity to carry a lot of food and a hell of a lot of water. And that was really important to me on this ride, that I can take a lot of stuff with me. It also means that if there's stuff that I need to get to quickly, like arm warmers, rain jackets, I can keep it in there as well. But I am primarily trying to keep it just for food and water on this trip, and see how I get on. And so last but not least, we have the rear bag. And this is an important one because it's one that you don't have much access to, so you have to be really careful about what you put in this because you don't want to be messing around. I'm using the Blackburn rear bag at the minute because it doesn't sway. I really like these because they tighten up really well, they tighten up fastly, and what's really cool is they are quite accessible, not as easily accessible as the others, but you can just undo these clips, and then you can just actually pull the whole bag out. And this is a waterproof bag as well, so it opens up pretty easy. The Blackburn kit is actually quite, it's really quite cheap to buy. So if you're looking for something on a budget, it is really good stuff. It's not the lightest of stuff, but it just works. So in the rear I like to keep all my clothing and sleeping stuff. So it's stuff that I'm not using very often, maybe once or twice a day, because it can be a bit of a faffle putting everything back together on the back again. One thing I will mention before we go any further is I'm using these little cat eye lights, and these are called the Wearablex, and I have two. I have one here and one there. They're little discs, and they last about 30 hours each on lighting on one charge, and one charge is 2 hours. So they're really good. It means that I'm actually running 2 lights at all times, so I'm not taking any chances on anything being behind me. So in the back here, with obviously the Andes, you are up at 4,000 or 5,000 meters. Something like this is very high. There's a lot less oxygen, but also it's a lot colder. So you've got to think about your clothing. There's got to be a lot more stuff that you're going to have to take with you to make sure you're going to be okay in case you have an emergency, something breaks, and you need to find somewhere to sleep. It's really important that you have that as a security, not just a survival blanket. You have a little bit more than that, and that's something I don't want to get worried about and concerned while I'm riding. I want to know that I've got the backup there. So I'm actually taking some overshoes, but they're just kind of like cheap windproof ones for the minute, and they should do the job okay. I'm quite happy with them. And a high-vis jacket, so Bikingman require this, they say that you have to have a high-vis, and I agreed. So this is a waterproof high-vis, semi-waterproof, but it just keeps you out of trouble, and it actually keeps you quite warm, but I like that one, and it just makes sure you're seen at night. The last thing at night is you want to be wearing dark clothing. And actually, because it is going to be getting quite cold on the trip, and I do plan to be doing quite a bit of riding at night, I've actually got a Psychology windproof. So what I love about the Psychology one is it is actually very thick, so it's got the sections in here which are kind of like nice cotton wool lined, so you stay really warm in that, so that's kind of be a nice, badass is that, a nice funky warm jacket for me while I'm riding. And then what I can do with that is I can just pack it away in the bottom when I actually get down from out the mountains and back to the coast. I keep a sleeping bag as well. This was $12.99 at your local Aldi, so that's a bit of a bargain. But the reason why I spend $12.99 on one, I don't have a fancy one. One, because I'm a little bit tight. Two, I don't really sleep very rough often. And you know, if you do need to carry extra food, I've always kept a small sleeping bag and a cheap one that if I had to throw it away, it'd be the first thing I'd probably go to make sure that I've, you know, had food as well. I've got some winter gloves as well, in case I do get caught in the mountains. It does get very cold. These are the Shimano S-Fire ones. They're quite cool. Arm warmers. Leg warmers. Survival blanket. Super important. I have a down mat. And last but not least, my bivy bag. And that is everything I keep in the rear. But like I say, it's one of these situations where these are the things that you don't want to be getting out throughout the day. You just want once throughout the day to get like your warmer clothes, or once to go sleeping at night.